Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lancaster. We could not have picked a nicer day to come to church. Oh my goodness, it's gorgeous out there. So we'll get you done here in an hour or a little more, and so you can be back out into it this afternoon. I'm Reverend Howard Dana, and I'm serving this congregation happily this year, and I want to welcome you to our service this morning. Today we're talking about St. Francis of Assisi, and so that's where we'll go with the service. Our call to worship are words that are attributed to him. Where hate rules, let us bring love. Where sorrow, joy. Let us strive more to comfort others than to be comforted, to understand others than to be understood, to love others than to be loved. For it is in giving that we receive, and in pardoning that we are pardoned. Let us worship together. I invite you to find a gray hymnal somewhere near you. We're going to turn to number 21 and stand and sing a familiar favorite, For the Beauty of the Earth. Number 21, please rise as you are able. Standing for the lighting of our chalice. In Unitarian Universalism, the flaming chalice is our most central symbol. For us, it is a beacon of truth and of knowledge. It is a light of hope and of peace, of understanding and of joy. We light it at each of our services to inspire us to take it out into the world with us. This morning, we light our chalice with these words by the Muslim poet Sa'di. To worship God is nothing other than to serve the people. It does not need rosaries, prayer carpets, or robes. All peoples are members of the same body, created from one essence. If fate brings suffering to one member, the others cannot stay at rest. Please be seated. I want to welcome you to church this morning. It's good to see all of you. If you are new among us, I want to extend a very warm welcome to you. I will assure you that this is a warm-hearted, open congregation. It is not a perfect congregation, so if that's what you're looking for, you're going to have to go to the Lutherans or somebody like that. But we do our best. We do our very best, and we want to assure you that you are very welcome here, no matter what you believe, and you'll find like minds here as well. Likewise, if you have been coming to this place for decades and sitting in approximately the same spot, we will keep that spot for you. This is where you're supposed to be on a Sunday morning. Want to let you know that in a couple of weeks we're going to, I don't know when the last time you did the flower communion. Anyway, I'm new here. We're going to do it on the first Sunday of June, but that means a little bit of preparation on your part. So the flower communion is a uniquely Unitarian Universalist ritual, And what it requires of all of you is to come to church on the 1st of June and to bring a flower with you. Now, that does not have to be a fancy flower. It can be a nice flower from your garden. It could be a dandelion that you picked on the way into church. But bring a flower with you, and we will all put all of those flowers into a common vase, and that will help us with the ritual of the flower communion later in the service. So remember to bring a flower on the 1st of June to church. I think that's about all we need to do for the talking. Let's do a responsive reading.
Good morning. Would you please turn in your gray hymnal to number 657 in the back? This is entitled, "It Matters What We Believe" by a Unitarian, Sophia Lyon-Foss. I will read the regular type, and you would please join me with the italicized type. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies. Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities. Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness. Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern. Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration. Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth. Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world. Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
Our second reading this morning is from this marvelous book about St. Francis by Murray Bodo. This is the little chapter titled A Mountain Jonquil. Now, a jonquil is a flower, which will become obvious soon. What of those who never made the journey inward? Francis had seen them all his life. They were in his own boyhood home, and even, he feared, among his brothers. You knew them for their insensitivity, for they were as insensitive as the outer self is compared to the inner. And what was saddest to him was the worry and concern of those who had never descended far enough into themselves to find that serene center where they would meet and listen to others. Because they never went deep enough, they found only themselves. And in that meeting, they began to worry about their lives, their future, what they would leave behind for others to remember. In short, they saw only their own mortality and were frightened at the brevity and seeming futility of living, then passing on, in time forgotten by everyone. He was thinking of all these people one day when he was standing atop Mount Subasio, gazing upon the breathtaking panorama of Assisi and the whole valley of Spoleto below him. He looked down and saw a tiny jonquil looking up at him, and he forgot the majesty of mountains and valley in concentrating on the delicate, trembling beauty of this single mountain flower. It stood there in the freedom of the mountain air, glorifying God. Its life, so brief and vulnerable, was an act of praise as everyone's life should be. It did not worry about what it would accomplish in life or leave behind, nor did it fear for its own brief existence. It simply was. I invite you to settle in for the sermon. Occasionally, someone will ask me when I came out. As a gay man, this is not an unusual question, nor an unwelcome one. What the person expects to hear is the date when I first admitted to myself or someone else I am gay. By whether that date happened long ago or recently, they expect to know a bit more about me. But my honest answer always surprises them. When did you come out, they ask. Every day, I reply. Every day. That is the honest answer for most in the LGBTQ+ community. Sexual orientation and gender expression are not always obvious, so that means coming out repeatedly. It becomes so natural to reveal one's self, we almost do it automatically, just as we automatically guard ourselves in threatening situations. But for the most part, it feels good to come out, good to be fully ourselves, regardless of the reactions of others. Personal integrity is very important. Now, Unitarian Universalist churches are generally safer places for queer folk. The decades of work our denomination has done in recognizing homophobia and heterosexism resulted in accepting congregations. Difference is expected here. And each of us also knows what it is like to come out within our congregations. Come out not as a sexual minority, but as a person with a particular religious perspective. Here it is fine to come out as atheist or agnostic. It's fine to come out as Wiccan or pagan, fine to come out as Jewish or Buddhist or humanist. Religious beliefs are not usually obvious, so we have to explain what we believe to each other. And it takes safe space to be vulnerable. We need to know that we won't be rejected for what we believe. There's one theological position, however, Unitarian Universalists find a little bit difficult to accept, one that carries just a little too much baggage for most of us. The hardest thing to be in a UU congregation is a Christian. While there are good reasons for our suspicion, we have some growing to do in this regard. Enter St. Francis of Assisi. His whole life, Francis of Assisi lived in an exclusively Christian world, and an explicitly Catholic one at that. Sure, there were some Jews living on the margins of Italian society and Muslims in far-off lands, but day-to-day life would have brought Francis into contact only with medieval Christians. It would be a mistake, however, to confuse Catholic hegemony with a lack of diversity. As a Mediterranean crossroads, Italy of the 1200s had a surprisingly diverse population. Raised in the lap of luxury, Francis was brought up to take on his father's successful cloth business. As an importer of fine fabrics, Francis's father dressed the whole family in nice clothes and provided a magnificent house for them to live in. Initially a playboy, Francis loved the party life, drinking with his friends and singing troubadour songs popular at the time. The walls of Assisi could not hold young Francis, however. Initially wanting to be a soldier, he joined an assault against nearby Perugia, only to wind up in a grim prison, sickly for a year. Finally ransomed by his father, Francis spent another year bedridden at home, regaining his health. There was no going back to the party life. Then God spoke to him in a way that gave Francis his true calling. "Rebuild my church, Francis, for you can see it has fallen into disrepair." In this conversion moment, Francis shed his old life of luxury and began a new one of service, especially service to the poor. Now, it would be easy to imagine Francis breaking with the medieval Catholic Church and starting something different on his own, but schism didn't interest Francis at all. In fact, one of the first things he did after gathering a group of followers was to seek official standing from Pope Innocent III. Because having church approval was important to Francis, the rule he wrote for his new order went through papal revisions before it was accepted. Innocent could see the value in what Francis and his followers were trying to do. They wanted the church and Christians in general to care more about one another. Following the example of Jesus, Francis wanted love to be at the center of his work. Because he lived 800 years ago in medieval Europe, we get a somewhat distorted image of St. Francis, so distorted, in fact, that we imagine him as garden statuary. We have tamed St. Francis to make him the patron of animals and birds. We have romanticized his teachings. Written centuries later, he never even prayed the famous prayer of St. Francis. In his day, Francis upset people. He challenged the social order. His father rejected him, as did most of Assisi. What a waste, many thought. How could a privileged young man like that be led so far astray? Part of the reason Unitarian Universalists get squeamish about Christianity is because, like Francis, we have left the ease and comfort for something more difficult. Our own theological integrity has forced us to wrestle with American culture. We struggle with America's promotion of an exclusivist Christianity that rejects us. Like Francis, we have eyes for those who are left out. And like Francis, we struggle mightily to address the ills of our world. Like him, we fail at times to live up to our ideals, yet we persevere. A famous story of St. Francis involves him preaching on street corners in Assisi to passers-by. The story tells us he tried to get his message across day after day, on corner after corner, being utterly rejected by everyone. Finally, he took his sermon out beyond the city walls and preached it to the birds. It said these birds quieted their singing to listen to Francis. It was then he knew he had to go to people who could hear his message, rather than trying to change those who did not want to be changed. We would be wise to follow his example. I am a Unitarian Universalist minister, in large part because I came out as a gay man in the early 1990s. At that time, almost no one was ordaining openly gay people. Churches were hostile to same-sex relationships, and most members of the LGBTQ+ community felt judged by and excluded from religion. As a young adult, I found First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon, after college. The openness of this congregation and its sense of history appealed to me. Here was a liberal church that took itself seriously. It was active in its community and caring towards its neighbors. Best of all, it never asked me to give up the Christianity I was raised with. Instead, it helped me re-examine this Christianity, preparing me for the thorough examination my beliefs would receive in seminary. I did not know it at the time, but First Unitarian Church was unusual in incorporating Christian teachings and practices. Most UU churches by that time had fully rejected them. Only later would I find the need to be in the closet about my own personal beliefs. There is such reactivity to Jesus in most UU churches that it makes it difficult for Christians to stay. Though never accepted in his lifetime, Francis did not seem to let that bother him. He just went ahead, challenging the church to do better. A little over a year ago, when I met with the board of UUCL to see if we might partner, I made sure to tell them two things. I don't know if they remember. They might not. I said, I'm a practicing Christian, and that I would accept every other person's theological position. This year, I have done both. Having worshiped with an Episcopal church in Harrisburg for 2 years after COVID, I continue to attend there, usually on Saturday evenings. I still sing in their choir on Sundays when I'm not here. And I have led this congregation this year as well as I know how. I have tried to make space here for all of you, all of us, to be ourselves. This is what I plan to do next year, too. I'm sure it's God. And we were just getting to the denouement. I've tried to make space for all of us here to be ourselves, and this is what I plan to do next year, too. But I feel the need to come out to you a little further. You see, I am called by Francis of Assisi. I'm moved by the way that he saw the world and the ways in which he wanted to change it for the better. I need to come out to you as a Franciscan and to assure you that this will change things very little here at UUCL. About 10 years ago, a black gay UU colleague of mine was called to a small church in central Massachusetts. The church that had called him was very excited to have checked 2 diversity boxes, accepting him both for his race and his sexual orientation. The first few years went well with their black gay minister. The church thrived, and so did my friend. Then the unexpected happened. He fell in love with a woman. During the sermon he preached, when it was clear this new relationship was going to be a long-term one, my friend exclaimed, "I'm still black." Like you, the congregation laughed and laughed. Their minister might no longer be obviously gay, but he was still obviously black. Diversity is not about keeping people in boxes. It is about accepting one another through all the twists and turns of life. God expects us to change, so we should expect changes too. My friend is now happily married to his wife, and they have a beautiful 1-year-old child. Their church still feels very lucky. So in the spirit of my friend, I can say with some certainty, I am still gay. The new thing to try out is being Franciscan and your minister. In just a month, I will formally join a dispersed Franciscan community recognized by the Episcopal Church. In mid-June, at its annual gathering, I'll become a novice in the community of Francis and Clare. My joining this group of 60 brothers and sisters will allow me to go deeper in my own spiritual life. It will give me support to do not only this ministry, but wider ministry in the world. It will give me purpose and structure. It will ask me to be my best self with you and with all whom I meet. The evolution of a spiritual life is often mysterious. Even a couple of years ago, I would not have expected this at all. And it seems to be the thing drawing me steadily forward. So what does this mean for us, you ask? Very little. You can still look forward to the same diversity of thought and opinion this congregation is known for. Sunday mornings will feel the same, and no one will be trying to convince you of a religious position that doesn't fit you. I will welcome your questions and your support, and yes, I will have one of those funny brown robes to wear at Franciscan events, though no one becomes a friar for the fashionable clothing. The community I'm joining upholds three main values: simplicity, fidelity, and humility. It centers all it does in love. In these regards, my moving toward it is less of a theological change and more of a deepening of the things that I have sought long to preach as a minister. I will still wear a white shirt on Sundays and bring you poetry. I will still ask each of you to go deeper into your own spiritual lives. Once on a trip to Egypt in 1219, Francis chose to visit Sultan Malek el-Kamel. Because of the Crusades, relations between Christians and Muslims were very tense. Francis knew that by walking into the Sultan's armed camp, he might not walk out alive. But the Sultan received the odd little man dressed in rags. They talked for some hours. Francis unsuccessfully tried to get the Sultan to follow Jesus. The Sultan unsuccessfully tried to get Francis to convert to Islam. Instead, the two men came away from the encounter understanding one another better. We cannot say for the Sultan, but we know Francis never spoke ill of Muslims for the rest of his life. His love and respect extended to them too. God was big enough for everyone. He walked out of the Sultan's camp with his face shining. Francis knew love. He knew to trust it and to follow it. It was love that would inspire each of his followers since. So be it. Amen.
I grew up in a church that was basically monochromatic. From the tall Doric columns that face the street to the sanctuary interior, white dominated. Our services were equally unadorned. There was no Book of Common Prayer liturgy, no grand processions, no banners, no recitations of faith. Listening to Cynthia Davis recount the panoply of her Episcopalian upbringing several weeks ago, I felt a little, though temporary, regret that my childhood services had not had more color, more drama, perhaps. In intervening years, in most of the Protestant churches and Quaker meeting houses I visited, there is little or no decoration as well. Contrast that unembellished tendency with the opulence, the conspicuous splendor of the Roman Catholic Mother Church, St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. The cavernous space is astounding. The ornamentation is overwhelming, and its ceremonial acts, such as the recent funeral of Pope Francis and the ritual conclave of bishops who have just elected Robert Prevost as the new Pope, Leo XIV, are captured for the world to see. But the chief impression St. Peter's made on me was the massive use of gold. I've read that the use of so much decorative gold in earlier centuries was to have the common folk forget momentarily their often wretched life struggles and to consider the promise of heaven, the hereafter, where they'd walk on streets of gold. Well, gold is gold, after all. And I'm sure some more mercenary church fathers and wealthier citizens saw the accumulation of gold in church decoration as not only a safe investment, but also a point of pride in their city's ability to afford such treasure. A status symbol, if you will. As an aside, perhaps you've noticed all the recent gilding that has transformed the Oval Office in the White House. Look for it in video clips. So where does St. Francis fit into all of this? From the brief biography I read of him, and also what we've heard about him just now from Reverend Howard, Giovanni, later Francesco, had a fairly comfortable youth, and he fought in an intercity war. After 3 years, after his recovery from his imprisonment, after 3 years, he tried to join a papal military campaign, but on the way, he had a vision to return to Assisi. While he was back home, he dedicated himself to prayer and solitude. And at that point, dressed in rags, he made a pilgrimage to Rome, where he undoubtedly saw some of the basilica's grand size and decoration. What must have been his impressions about such splendor? A subsequent vision that Reverend Howard mentioned about addressing the state of the church ended in his father's taking him to the Bishop of Assisi, where Francis reputedly stripped himself naked and renounced worldly goods. The bishop gave him a cloak. These visions motivated him to live simply and to preach the gospel in poverty. As he attracted followers, he eventually founded the Friars Minor, which became the Franciscan order as we know it today. He also established an order for like-minded women, the Poor Clares, as well as an order for those who could not leave their families and their homes. And eventually, wearied of all the administration and suffering from illness and growing blindness, he retreated to greater solitude. The lasting image we have of Francis is of a benevolent soul, a social worker of sorts, a preacher who lived in poverty, dressed in a rough brown habit, a lover of nature and its creatures. Nevertheless, he respected the church's sacraments and its hierarchy, and perhaps that was why he was canonized relatively quickly, 2 years after his death. If I were Catholic and had to choose a patron saint, Francis would be my choice. I understand completely how he renounced a life of wealth, recognizing social equality, emphasizing simplicity, and venerating nature and her creatures. This is the time in our service when we pass the plate and ask you for your offering to support the church and its monthly recipients. We share the plate, 50% of the plate, with a worthy charity, which right now is Lidditz Chooses Love, and you will find in your order of service a brief explanation of what Lidditz Chooses Love is about. The morning offering may now be collected.
Thank you, Alan, for all the beautiful music. We come to a thoughtful, prayerful time in our service, a time in which if you have come on this beautiful day carrying a sorrow, we invite you to come forward and to press it into a stone or a tile and leave it there. Likewise, if you have come today filled with some great, wonderful, new joy, come forward and press that into a stone as well, for we know that the joys and sorrows of life are there to balance each other out, that we as humans experience both daily. Come forward with your joys and sorrows if you feel so moved. invite you now to sit with this gathered congregation in a few moments of silence. Then I'll offer a prayer. Spirit of life, one of the most disconcerting things that we have to do as humans is both hold on to what we know and how we are, and to be open to changes that come our way. Often in our world that sees so much change, daily change, monthly change, we think to ourselves, let's just nail some things down. Let's just make sure we know how it is. Then those changes come and beckon us out further than we ever thought we could go, deeper than we ever thought we might go. Thank you for this tendency in us. Thank you for each of these opportunities to know ourselves a little more deeply, to know why we do what we do, why we believe what we believe. For the world that we live in is both beautiful and terrible. It is filled with days like this one in which we think that spring might go on forever with plants for sale and birds singing and bright sunshine. And then we remember some of the other things. We know that much is required of us, but luckily not too much. For the religious life never asks more of us than we can handle. It never asks us to be something that we are not. It never insists that we change ourselves to please others. The religious life is a life of inner knowing, an inner knowing that then results in us interacting with the wider world in changed ways, joyful ways, in loving ways. Inspire us by St. Francis, a man who cared nothing for the trappings of the church, yet stayed in it, yet wished to see it become a kinder and more loving institution. For a man whose message was so profound that he had to preach it to birds to realize that not everyone was going to hear it, but that some would, and that would be enough. Keep us humble. Keep us faithful. Keep us as simple as we might be in our living, that we too might be open to the changes that come our way and meet them not with fear and suspicion, but with an open-hearted yes. Let us live like this. We will be blessed, and we will bless the world. Amen.
Would you please join me in saying the affirmation of faith, which you will find inside the front cover of your gray hymnal. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ofrenda. Este es nuestro gran pacto, el convivir unidos en paz, el buscar la verdad en amor, y ayudarnos unos a los otros. I draw your attention to the announcements that are very copiously outlined in the back of your order of service. I want to draw special attention to several things. One is that this morning, following the service, following coffee hour, which follows the service, and coffee hour is accessed just below us by either the elevator or the stairs. Anyway, after you have your coffee, please go over to Founders Hall, where we are going to have our annual meeting and elect some new board members, approve a budget, and other important church necessities. Also, immediately after the service, if you don't just go down for coffee, in the little loge that is behind the control desk, please join Kelsey for a worship sharing circle conversation, which is, I think, scheduled for 20 minutes. And when you're exiting the church after the service or after the congregational meeting, the plant sale is still going on outside to help support the work of the church, and sponsored by the Green Sanctuary Committee. I think that's all in the way of announcements.
I think so too. This is mic 2. You have neither. Use the other. Got it. There we go. All right. Thank you, Kim. Always a pleasure to work with you. Now, if you've been missing singing Alleluia in churches, now is your chance. Let us turn in the gray hymnal to number 203. We're going to stand and sing All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. These are words attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. Please rise as you're able. Sing out those Alleluias, number 203.
Of the earth and sky, come, kindred, lift your voices high. Alleluia, alleluia, bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Swift rushing wind so wild and strong, white clouds that sail in heaven along. Alleluia, alleluia, fair rising morn in praise rejoice. High stars of evening find a voice. Alleluia, 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 alleluia,
forth into this beautiful day and see it as St. Francis would have seen it, as a lovely opportunity to see not only the sun, feel not only the breeze, know not only the birds and the animals, but to see humans everywhere as friends and fellow travelers, companions on the way. Go in peace and go in love. Amen.